After age 60, certain vegetables we think are healthy can actually worsen joint pain due to how our bodies change with age. Nightshades like tomatoes, eggplant, and white potatoes contain alkaloids that can trigger inflammation, especially in joints already vulnerable to wear. Cruciferous vegetables like raw kale, broccoli, and Brussels sprouts are high in oxalates and goitrogens, which may interfere with thyroid function and lead to calcium deposits in joints. Even peppers, including bell pan chili, can overstimulate pain receptors due to compounds like capsaicin. Instead, favor low oxalate anti-inflammatory vegetables like zucchini, carrots, and cooked beets. Add collagen-rich foods like bone broth and wild salmon. Pair them with vitamin C sources to support tissue repair, and use turmeric with black pepper to naturally reduce inflammation. As we age, food isn't just fuel, it's instruction to the body: repair or inflame. Knowing what to subtract and what to replace can mean the difference between chronic pain and lasting mobility. Not all vegetables are healing after 60. In fact, some of the very ones we've trusted for decades may be quietly triggering inflammation, joint pain, and stiffness that most people mistakenly chalk up to aging. The reality is, your body isn't just aging. It's responding differently to compounds that once posed no threat. What changes is not just the food, but your biology. As you age, your digestive lining thins, your stomach acid weakens, and your gut microbiome shifts. All of which means that plant compounds once easily processed can now become irritants. Let's talk about nightshades, a family of vegetables that includes tomatoes, eggplant, white potatoes, and peppers. These are rich in alkaloids, chemical compounds plants produce as a natural defense mechanism. When consumed by someone over 60 with a slower repair rate and reduced gut resilience, these alkaloids can damage the gut barrier and lead to what's called intestinal permeability or leaky gut. Once that barrier is compromised, particles from food or bacteria that are meant to stay in the digestive tract start leaking into the bloodstream. And the problem is that this less healthy, less autonomous system, leaky gut, once that barrier is compromised, sometimes cites decrease intestine. The problem is that the less healthy, less autonomous digestive system, B2, D2, the immune system responds aggressively, releasing inflammatory cytokines. And those inflammatory markers don't just stay in the gut, they circulate throughout the body. One of the first places they settle is in the joints. Why? Because joints are relatively avascular. They have low blood flow, slower healing, and less immune protection, making them perfect targets for silent inflammation. The stiffness you feel in the morning, the cracking knees, the soreness in your hips or back after sitting. That's not just getting old, it's biology reacting to what you're feeding it. Even more surprisingly, some of the worst offenders are vegetables we've been told to eat more of, like kale, broccoli, and Brussels sprouts. These belong to the cruciferous vegetable family and are high in compounds called goitrogens, which interfere with thyroid hormone production. Your thyroid is essential for regulating metabolism, energy, and tissue repair. When thyroid function slows, even subtly, your body's ability to rebuild collagen and cartilage in joints also declines. These vegetables are also high in oxalates, natural compounds that bind to calcium and can form crystals, which may lodge in soft tissues, including the joints, kidneys, and tendons. Oxalate buildup doesn't cause a reaction in everyone, but in people with impaired gut flora, which becomes more common after 60, oxalates can escape digestion and contribute to inflammation and physical discomfort. This is especially true for those who eat these vegetables raw, like in smoothies or salads, because cooking reduces some of the oxalate content. The third vegetable group that becomes problematic is peppers. Bell peppers, chili peppers, and anything containing capsaicin. While capsaicin is often praised for its fat-burning and pain-relieving effects, it also stimulates the TRPV1 pain receptors in your nervous system. In small amounts, this is harmless, even beneficial. But over time, and in sensitive individuals, repeated stimulation can lead to nerve hypersensitivity, increasing your perception of pain, especially in inflamed or arthritic joints. It's ironic, but the very plant compounds that defend vegetables in nature, their natural pesticides, can become internal attackers when our digestive defenses are down, and they almost always are after 60. With age, stomach acid declines, enzyme production drops, and beneficial gut bacteria become less diverse. That means your body loses some of its ability to neutralize or detoxify these compounds. So what used to be fine in your 30s can now inflame your system, with subtle but serious consequences. You may notice more joint stiffness, slower recovery from exercise, random aches that weren't there before, and all of it could trace back to these healthy foods. The solution isn't to fear vegetables, it's to be more precise with them. Some vegetables support healing, while others, especially those high in alkaloids, oxalates, and goitrogens, can hinder it. This is where personalized nutrition becomes essential. After 60, food isn't just about nutrients, it's about signaling. Every bite sends a message to your biology, either repair or inflame. The foods that work with your body now are different than what worked at 30. Cooked zucchini, carrots, beets, squash. These are low in oxalates and easy to digest. Pair them with collagen-rich broths, wild-caught salmon or sardines, and now you're feeding the raw materials your joints need to rebuild. Add natural anti-inflammatories like turmeric with black pepper, which increases absorption of curcumin by up to 2000%, and you begin turning off the inflammation pathways at the cellular level. And crucially, remove the top 3 vegetable groups that trigger joint inflammation in aging bodies: nightshades, cruciferous vegetables in raw form, and spicy peppers. This isn't a diet trend, it's cell-level strategy, because once the joint cartilage is gone, it's hard to replace. But if you reduce inflammation, feed the repair process, and protect your gut, the body still knows how to heal. And healing is the goal, not just avoiding pain, but restoring mobility, power, and freedom. Aging doesn't have to mean decline, but it does require adaptation. The vegetables that supported you at 30 may be sabotaging you at 60. And once you understand that, everything changes. You stop eating blindly, you stop accepting joint pain as inevitable, and you start giving your body what it actually needs to stay strong, not just for the next few months, but for the next 20 years. Because joint health isn't just about movement, it's about independence. It's about dignity. And it begins with what you put on your plate. Your joints aren't just wearing out with age. They're being irritated from the inside, often silently. And the root cause may be far less mechanical than most people assume. While it's common to blame joint pain after 60 on decades of wear and tear, the truth is, much of what we label as aging is actually chronic, low-grade inflammation. The kind that builds up not from physical overuse, but from biological irritation. The kind that builds up not from physical overuse, but from biological irritation. This irritation doesn't always come from overexertion, accidents, or arthritis alone. It can start in your gut, your immune system, and, most surprisingly, from specific foods you consume every day, thinking they are helping you. Your joints, knees, hips, shoulders, fingers, are built to endure thousands of movements per day. They are made of cartilage, connective tissue, and synovial fluid. all of which have built-in repair mechanisms. But those mechanisms are heavily dependent on signals, chemical, hormonal, and inflammatory signals that tell the body when to rebuild and when to protect. When inflammation levels are high, those signals get distorted. The body shifts from rebuilding mode into defense mode, halting collagen synthesis, reducing lubrication, and sometimes even triggering autoimmune reactions. And what triggers this internal switch? Often, it begins with the gut. As we pass age 60, changes in the gut lining and microbial diversity alter the way our immune system behaves. The mucosal barrier becomes thinner. The bacteria that once helped us digest plant fibers and neutralize plant toxins decline. This creates the perfect storm for something called increased intestinal permeability, often referred to as leaky gut, a condition where small gaps form in the gut lining, allowing compounds from food like plant lectins, oxalates, or undigested proteins to enter the bloodstream. Once in the bloodstream, your immune system identifies them as foreign invaders and mounts an inflammatory response. Over time, and especially when this is happening daily due to repeated exposure from diet, this immune response becomes chronic and systemic. That means it doesn't stay in the gut. It travels. And because joints have limited blood flow and fewer immune defenses compared to organs like the liver or kidneys, they become prime targets for this circulating inflammation. You feel it as stiffness, as throbbing, as deep soreness you can't quite explain. It worsens in the morning, it intensifies after rest. But it's not just aging, it's your immune system reacting to an overload of irritants, many of which you unknowingly invited in through diet. One of the biggest culprits, vegetables high in natural defense chemicals, like alkaloids from nightshades or oxalates from cruciferous plants. When your gut barrier is strong and your microbial population is diverse, your body can often handle these compounds with no issue. But after 60, those protective factors diminish. That means even a single tomato salad or kale smoothie could be enough to push your immune system into high alert. And over time, that reaction becomes your new baseline. A constant drip of inflammatory chemicals into the joint space creates an environment that is not only hostile to healing, but actively destructive. Collagen breaks down faster than it's replaced. Synovial fluid loses viscosity. The cushioning inside the joint thins. Bones rub closer together. And what was once a minor irritation becomes full-blown arthritis. But here's the key insight. The damage doesn't start in the joint. It starts with what's leaking into your bloodstream. And often, the foods doing this damage are the ones people are told to eat more of. Raw spinach, kale, eggplant, hot peppers. These vegetables are not universally bad, but for an aging body with a compromised gut barrier and sluggish detox systems, they can become triggers. What's worse is that this process is slow. It builds over months or years. That makes it hard to detect, hard to connect, and even harder to reverse, unless you know what to look for. And if you've already started feeling the symptoms, morning stiffness, reduced mobility, unexplained swelling, chances are the inflammation has already made its way to the joint capsule. But that doesn't mean you're out of options. Quite the opposite. Because inflammation is reversible. It's modifiable. And it's something you can control, but only when you realize the true origin of the problem. The problem, that means shifting the conversation from wear and tear to wear and flare. Not what movements break your joints down, but what exposures flare your system up. The body is remarkably resilient. Even after 60, cartilage cells still respond to anti-inflammatory signals. Collagen still regenerates, but only when the immune system is given permission to stop attacking. That starts with removing the triggers. Start with your plate. Eliminate known irritants for a few weeks, things like tomatoes, peppers, raw cruciferous vegetables, and even legumes for some. Replace them with low-inflammatory alternatives. Cook carrots, zucchini, squash, refruit, and small portions of fruits low in fructose. And rice, and cook as few vegetable or small portions of fruit known fructose, meaning small portions of fruit, and small portions of fruit. Putting back known irritants for a few weeks, single foods to be allowed to be eaten. This is guidelines for absorption of fruit, such as low inflammatory. The time look for to let this happen is after the first 14 days of the opioid fads. Focus on gut healing first. Bone broth for glycine, fermented foods for microbial diversity, and collagen-rich proteins paired with vitamin C sources to jumpstart tissue repair. Sleep becomes critical because it's during deep sleep that your immune system recalibrates and your joint tissues regenerate. Hydration matters, but not just plain water. Include minerals like magnesium and potassium, which help balance the inflammatory response. Movement is essential too, not intense but consistent. Joints are nourished by motion, not rest. But they need to be moved in a low inflammation environment to heal. All of this works together, but only if you address the root cause, internal irritation. And for many, especially after 60, that irritation isn't from overuse, but from inside-out damage caused by foods that used to be healthy but are now biologically incompatible with your current state. The good news is that once you remove those triggers and support your body's natural repair systems, the healing response is often fast. People report waking up without stiffness, regaining fluid motion in their joints, and feeling stronger in just a few weeks. That's not magic, that's biology. And it's what happens when you stop feeding the fire and start supporting the repair. So when you hear that joint pain is just part of aging, question it. Because while time plays a role, inflammation plays a bigger one. Your joints don't just wear out. They respond, they react. And more often than not, they're reacting to what you put inside your body every single day. Change that input and everything else starts to shift. From pain back to power. From stiffness back to strength. And from aging back to healing. The right foods can rebuild joint strength, but only if you remove the wrong ones first. Because nutrition is not just about what you add. It's about what you eliminate that interferes with your body's ability to repair, restore, and regenerate. Most people over 60 are trying to fix their joints with supplements, painkillers, or stretching routines. But they're ignoring the one factor that has the most immediate systemic impact on joint health, their daily diet. Specifically, the hidden irritants they consume unknowingly. See, your body is programmed to heal. That's a biological fact. Cartilage doesn't just degrade, it regenerates when given the right input. Synovial fluid, the lubricant between your joints, is replenished through nutrients, movement, and hormonal balance. But the repair process is extremely sensitive to internal inflammation. If inflammation is high, the repair switch is turned off. That means collagen won't be produced at the same rate. Enzymes that rebuild joint tissue are suppressed, and white blood cells begin treating your own tissues as threats. So the equation isn't simply about adding collagen powder or drinking more water, though those things can help. The equation begins with subtraction, removing the foods that are creating friction in your system. This is where most people get it wrong. They add a supplement without removing the trigger. They add turmeric while still eating tomatoes. They add glucosamine but keep putting raw spinach in their morning smoothie. And because they don't feel instant relief, they assume it's age or genetics. It's not. It's interference. After age 60, your body becomes more reactive to certain plant compounds, particularly oxalates, lectins, alkaloids, and nightshade-derived substances. These compounds, which were once neutral or even beneficial, now slip through your weakened gut barrier and act as molecular irritants. They interact with the immune system, causing cytokine release, chemical messengers that flood the bloodstream and seek out vulnerable tissue. And where does that tissue live? In your joints. Joints are especially vulnerable because they are avascular. They don't have the rich blood supply that muscles or organs do. That means toxins or inflammatory compounds that reach the joint capsule are harder to clear, they linger, they accumulate, and they start breaking down, raw spinach, to fuel natural collagen production. Every meal becomes a message, and over time those messages accumulate into chemistry, healing or hurting, regenerating or degenerating. What's critical to understand is that the body's ability to rebuild joint tissue doesn't disappear with age. It's just drowned out by noise, most of it coming from the inside. Inflammation is that noise. Remove it, and suddenly the repair signals become clear again. Think of it like this. Your body has a repair crew on standby. The tools are there, the workers are there. But the alarm system, inflammation, keeps sounding, forcing your body to focus on defense instead of repair. As long as that alarm keeps going off, healing can happen. And diet is the most powerful trigger of that alarm. More than movement, more than stress, more than sleep, though all of those matter, diet is the foundation. It is the daily variable you can change immediately, 3 to 4 times a day, loses its tight junctions. That means these superfoods can become super triggers. What should replace them? Foods that actively reduce inflammation, support collagen synthesis, and restore gut integrity. Start with bone broth, rich in glycine and proline, the amino acids your body needs to rebuild connective tissue. Add in wild-caught fatty fish like salmon or sardines, not only for protein but for the EPA and DHA omega-3s that directly reduce joint inflammation at the gene expression level. Include cooked vegetables that are low in oxalates like zucchini, carrots, squash, and peeled cucumbers. These are easier on the digestive system and contain fiber that feeds good bacteria without introducing plant toxins. Add turmeric, not in capsule form, but in food mixed with black pepper to increase curcumin absorption by 2000%. These are anti-inflammatory at the molecular level. Pair your protein with vitamin C-rich foods like papaya or cooked red cabbage, not cartilage at a microscopic level. This leads to that slow grind people call wear and tear, but in truth it's not mechanical, it's biochemical. And you can stop it. But only if you're willing to start by removing what doesn't belong. That begins with cutting out the top inflammatory vegetables that affect aging adults. Tomatoes, eggplant, white potatoes, hot peppers, raw kale, spinach, beets in raw form, and cruciferous vegetables like Brussels sprouts, especially when eaten raw or frequently. That list may sound counterintuitive because we've been told for decades that these are superfoods, and they are, for the right person, in the right phase of life, with the right gut lining and immune function. But after 60, your enzyme levels drop, your microbial diversity narrows, and the gut barrier with compounding impact over time. You'll know it's working not because of some dramatic overnight change, but because one morning you'll wake up and the stiffness will be slightly less. The creak in your knees won't last as long. You'll walk up the stairs with more ease. You'll squat down to pick something up and realize it didn't hurt. That's what quiet healing feels like. It doesn't shout, it whispers, but it starts the moment you remove what blocks it. This process isn't about perfection, it's about subtraction and precision. Subtract what harms, and the body remembers how to heal. Precision comes from choosing foods that align with your biology now, not your biology from 30 years ago. That means cooking your vegetables instead of juicing them. Choosing nutrient-dense proteins over processed health snacks, focusing on anti-inflammatory herbs, clean fats, and mineral-rich broth. And most importantly, giving your body space, free from inflammation, to do what it's always known how to do: rebuild, recover, strengthen. Because aging doesn't remove your capacity to heal, it just raises the cost of inflammation. The more inflammation you carry, the more it taxes your system. The more joint pain you feel, the more inflammation is likely involved. And food is either feeding that fire or putting it out. The answer isn't more pills, more surgeries, or more frustration. It's fewer triggers, fewer irritants, and smarter inputs. The right foods work with your body to restore function from the inside out. But they only work if you stop interrupting that process by consuming the very things that are keeping your immune system on high alert. So if you want stronger joints, better mobility, and freedom from the daily grind of stiffness and pain, start by removing the wrong foods. That is the first act of healing. And this process, this act of healing, is not theoretical, is observable, measurable, and deeply physiological. Within days of removing inflammatory foods, your gut lining begins to restore its tight junctions. Your immune response starts to shift from reactive to regulatory, and those silent messengers of pain begin to dial down. You may not notice it at first. It may come as a sense of lightness in your knees, or a longer walk without discomfort, or a morning where you stretch and feel fluid instead of stuck. But underneath, the cellular machinery is coming back online. Your fibroblasts, the cells that lay down new collagen, work best in an anti-inflammatory environment, one free of oxidative stress and cytokine interference. And these cells don't just respond to supplements, they respond to real food inputs, to nutrient synergy, to the absence of biochemical confusion. Imagine the power of waking up knowing your body's healing overnight, because you finally removed the foods that have been fighting your biology for years. Imagine eating a meal that doesn't trigger joint pain, but instead signals joint repair. That's not hype, it's cellular reality when inflammation is removed and the correct molecular signals are restored. Every tissue in your body, from cartilage to fascia to ligament, is governed by the same principle: breakdown and repair. When the breakdown is constant and the repair is blocked by systemic inflammation, you lose strength, mobility, and confidence in your own body. But when the interference is gone, the repair resumes, quietly but powerfully. That's what most people miss. Healing can finally do what it's designed to do. Think of your joints not as worn-out parts, but as responsive tissues, waiting for the right conditions to thrive. And those conditions don't come from a bottle. They come from choices. Every meal, every bite, every day, you are not falling apart. You are being overloaded with the wrong inputs. The moment you remove those inputs, the pain fades, the swelling retreats, and regeneration begins. And if you give that process time, space, and respect, you will regain far more than joint health. You will regain control, not just of your movements, but of your future. Because nothing steals quality of life faster than losing the ability to move without pain. And nothing restores it faster than the realization that food isn't just fuel, it's molecular instruction. Instruction that can either accelerate decline or activate healing. The define moment of the minor delay, that is, you get to decide which doesn't scream. It hums. It builds gradually. It rewards consistency, not intensity. It rewards subtraction, not just addition. You don't need more exotic supplements. You need fewer silent saboteurs. And the hardest part is recognizing that those saboteurs might be hiding inside foods you were told were healthy for years. Raw kale, green smoothies, chili-laced salads, endless tomatoes, the foods that look good on the outside but cause chaos on the inside. So go in. It takes humility to pause and reevaluate what your body actually needs at this stage of life. And it takes courage to let go of routines that no longer serve your healing. But what you gain in return is real power. The power to move again, to trust your knees again, to bend, lift, climb, and walk without dreading the next step. This isn't about restriction. It's about restoration. It's about removing what the body sees as hostile. So if you take just one thing from this, let it be this. Healing isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters most. Remove the quiet enemies on your plate. Give your body the space to repair. And trust this truth. Even after 60, your joints are not broken. They're waiting. Waiting for the inflammation to stop. Waiting for the right signal to rebuild. You don't need new knees. You need new inputs. And once you change the signal, the body will remember exactly what to do. Not just to survive, but to move strong, live free, and age with power.